Hey, hi Sandeep. Hey, Pampana. Hi, Vinita. Just we are waiting for some more minutes. So let a few folks join in and then we'll get started.
No problem, no problem.
Hey, hi Ankush. Hey, Shivling. Hi.
Hello, Ashwin. Morning. Morning, morning. Hello, hello, hi. How are you, sir? Hello.
Hey, Shivling. Hi. Thanks for joining in. Hey, Pawan.
Hi.
Hey, Deep.
Hi, Shashi. Morning. How are you doing?
You're doing well, Shivling. Thanks. Awesome. Shivani, I think we have enough quorum to get started. Yeah.
Sure, sir. Uh, Hello and welcome everyone. I am Shivani Gupta, the host and moderator of today's session. And first of all, I would like to thank all of you for taking out the time to join us today. And as we talk about cybersecurity essentials for seed stage startups, the basic agenda of today's session will be the speaker talk, followed by the Q&A, where you can ask all the questions that you may have, and we will try to answer maximum of those. So without any further delay, let me introduce you to the speaker of today's session, that is Mr. Ashwini Paliwal, the CEO of SecOps Solution. He will be guiding you throughout the session, and over to you, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, Shivani. Thanks for the introduction. First of all, thank you everyone. Thanks for joining in. It'll be great, if we can keep this session a little more interactive. So feel free to post your questions in the chat. Shivani will keep taking them up once we are done with the webinar. The objective of this webinar would be primarily for the first 15-20 minutes. Be sharing the the tips and the practical aspects on how seed startups can focus on securing their technical infrastructure and build their security processes. And post that, would love to take as many questions as you have, right? So without further ado, let me just quickly share my screen. Shivani, let me know if this is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Awesome. So, just a little introduction of the topic. So, it's cybersecurity essentials for seed stage startups. So, we have specifically mentioned here seed stage startups. because we understand that the startups who are at the early stage, who are at the seed stage, they have a couple of unique challenges that, let's say, an enterprise company who already has an established security setup, who has a decent security team, they may not have. First, for seed stage startups, I think security is a lot of time an afterthought. For them, the biggest challenge is survival and getting to that product market fit. Security, although, is essential for them, but unfortunately they're not able to put in that amount of time. Like, totally understandable. And that's why today's session is focused on what are those low hanging fruits that you can pick up to make sure that at least majority of your circumferences are protected, without putting in that much amount of time, and without requiring a lot of resources. So a little about me, like who am I, and what authority do I have to give you all of these inputs. So I have experience working as a cybersecurity researcher, a backend and a systems programmer. I have been building security products for past 6 years, speaking with founders, helping companies at the startup level, at the enterprise level, a couple of banks, helping them secure their parameters. So I have some amount of experience there. I was a founding engineer at a microservice security startup, Defense. I led security engineering at Versa Networks. There we were building malware sandboxing and antivirus modules. And in 2021, I decided to drop out of Carnegie Mellon to build SecOps solution along with my team. I'll just take 2 minutes to introduce what SecOps does, and I promise there will be no more marketing of the company from here on. So SecOps solution is essentially a full stack security assessment platform. It is an automated product that helps companies, could be companies at a SMB stage or a mid market stage, identify security issues at their infrastructure level, so their servers, network devices, containers, microservices if they are using them, and applications, mobile apps, and web application. So it's one consolidated platform that helps you identify all those security risks, helps you prioritize as to what is really critical, what can actually get exploited in your system, as opposed to something being a theoretical security vulnerability, and also helps you in automated remediation as well. So that's a gist of what SecOps does. For especially for companies who do not have a security team in place, the product helps as one-stop solution, so that at a click of a button you really know what is the status of your security and how you can fix it. So now getting started with a couple of key pointers that I wanted to cover today. The most important one is protection from DDoS and bot attacks, right? So most of the startups that I have seen are susceptible to this one, and there's a little information on how do you protect yourself around it. Interestingly, DDoS is something that usually nobody is targeting your company, especially at seed stage startups. The bad actors have a real benefit or a real motivation to specifically target a small startup, because the end return might not be much for them. But usually in DDoS, it's usually an automated attack where the crawlers or the bots are just floating on the internet looking for certain signatures, and they just keep on bombarding you with too many requests, and thereby bringing your application down. To you, that's a big threat, because all your bread and butter is your application, and that itself is going down. So although DDoS seems to be, there is no real complete 100% solution for DDoS, because a company as big as GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft, was also DDoSed some years back, where they had about 15 TB of payload being thrown to them in very of time. So nobody can really protect 100% from DDoS. But interestingly, some of the best solutions that work, especially at seed stage level, is having a Google CAPTCHA v3. Google CAPTCHA will significantly reduce any sort of bot crawling to your website. The another some random bots filling up forms on your website, where you keep on getting that garbage data, some spam data. Even that is significantly protected through Google CAPTCHA. So Google CAPTCHA was pretty good, was decent, I'd say, till version 2, but the version 3 that they have come up with does significantly better, and at the same time it doesn't have those problems that you would have initially, where you would have to select certain images. Let's select these. What are these images who have bike in it and all? So those become a little hindrance, and you don't want to have that sort of a friction on your website. But with V3, it is a completely frictionless experience. So you just using Google Captcha V3 would significantly improve your security posture. And of all the things that I am going to explain in this webinar, if there is only one thing that you have to implement, and if only one thing that is you can implement, it would be Google Captcha. So just put it on your website. It is going to save you a lot of headache. And the next is installing a decent firewall. Now you don't need a very heavy or a pricey firewall. You can go with any of the decent firewall that helps you build normal controls, like helping you block certain IPs who are constantly targeting you, which should be fairly easy to configure. One of the smart use cases I have seen is that Cloudflare's domain registration, right? So if you buy your domain through Cloudflare, or if you just transfer it to Cloudflare, you will get a firewall along with it in addition. So because all of us already own a domain, but Cloudflare will also give you those firewalling capabilities. I think that could be one of the ways where you can very quickly install a firewall in place. It's a very quick installation. It's just one of those recommendations, but having these two things will save you a lot of trouble and the headache. Now, the second point. So, how do you protect your cloud? I believe none. Actually, I can be sure about this, that none of the startups here maintain their own data centers, and it's not really worth maintaining your data centers at this stage. So, everybody is using cloud. What one of the major misconceptions I have heard with founders or even technical teams is that, hey, we are on cloud, so all of the security is taken care by cloud. Now this can't be far from truth. The thing is, if you go to any of the cloud, right, AWS, Microsoft, Azure, or Google Cloud, they specifically mention that that security is a shared responsibility. Now, what that really means is, let's say once you have created a virtual machine, right? Let's say EC2 in case of AWS. Now, at the time of creation, whatever EC2 that you have created is pristine. It's perfect. They have made sure that there are no major security vulnerabilities there. But so till then, it is AWS's responsibility to secure your system. From there on, whatever softwares that you may have installed, whatever libraries that you may install to run your applications, all of those things are the responsibility of the customer. AWS will not take the responsibility, or any Google Cloud or Microsoft will not take the security responsibility from there on. And there is a perfectly logical reason for it, because let's say, if you are aware of the Log4j vulnerability, the only patch for Log4j vulnerability was to upgrade your Log4j version. Now imagine if AWS took cognizance of it and automatically updated your Log4j. What happens in that case? There's a high probability your existing application would break, right? So that's why they wouldn't meddle much with your infra. And that's why cloud security is a shared responsibility. The first part, when they are giving you a resource on cloud, at that time it is secured. Post that, however you configure it, it is, or however you use it, it is user's responsibility. So you cannot rely completely on cloud that, hey, I'm on cloud, so I'm secure. So what are the things that you can do there? The first one is role-based authorization. Basically, only give that much access to your developers as much as they need. If a developer just needs to access certain resources, just give him a view access. Do not give him a create access. Similarly, the final, only one person in the team, usually that's the senior most technical person or the CTO, only they are supposed to have the complete root access. So do not share root access across all the engineers. Initially, this might sound a little bit of friction, but trust me, this is extremely essential because most of the data thefts happen through because some of the keys or credentials are stolen through your developers laptops, and you can't control much of it. So role-based authorization is of very essential importance. Just use this one simple rule. Only the senior-most person should have the root access. Next, the other developers, give them only those resources which they absolutely need. Just give them access to that. That's it. Leaky S3 buckets. So one of the major issues with S3 buckets, or similar offerings in Google Cloud or Azure, is S3 buckets a lot of time kept public, and being public, it leads to your data theft because it is sitting live, and you won't believe the biggest of the organizations have had this issue where they were not aware which buckets are public and which are private. So and that led to they leaking users data. So just making sure that none of your S3 buckets are public. If they are, then you are sure that they are meant to be public. In fact, recently AWS has come up with which it's currently in progress, where it is trying to move all the buckets back to the private, and it's asking you for a confirmation whether you want a certain bucket to be public or not. So I think that's a good step, but still it's essential that your team is aware of the buckets that you want to be public. Rest everything should be private by default. Network configuration would be another thing that you would want to check. In terms of AWS, I would say this is called security groups, where just make sure that only those ports are open which you really need, and just block access to all other ports, because ports are the easiest ways where a bad guy can enter into your system, or a bad guy can get information about your system. So just making sure your network configuration is right, and performing some scanning of your EC2 machines or your virtual machines in case of Azure, or you call it compute engine in case of Google Cloud. Running at least once a month a vulnerability scanner on your EC2 instances, so that you know what are the latest vulnerabilities, because new vulnerabilities are getting generated every single hour, right? So on an average, in a day, about 200 to 300 new security vulnerabilities are reported. So it's obviously not possible to fix and patch all of them. But what you need to be checking out is there any vulnerability that is very critical and that is being exploited heavily around the internet. So what you need to be checking is for those kind of few vulnerabilities, and the best way to do that is to scan for your virtual machines. SecOps has its own proprietary scanner that helps you check for all of these vulnerabilities in a real quick time. The next, so you most of you must have heard this term, right? DevSecOps. So DevSecOps is basically trying to build trying to build security in the development phase of your system. So all said and done, DevSecOps is more about culture rather than employing a particular tool in it. As a startup, of course, we cannot enforce all the strict security standards, because we also have to work with that pace of delivering more features and catering to clients in the limited bandwidth we have. So at your technical level, you need to find a balance between security and the developer flexibility. How much is it that you want to focus on security, and how much do you want to be flexible with your developers, so that it doesn't really become a big hindrance to them. One of the common cases that I've seen, which doesn't which always seems to be after a few months a waste of time, is people deploy a lot of code source code scanners. Initially all the teams are very strict about it. They start checking that there are no vulnerabilities in it, but after a point everybody just stops looking and just starts ignoring the results of the source code scanner. And the problem with that, and that's not really a developer problem, I feel, because the problem with source code scanners is they don't have a lot of business context of what your code is supposed to do. And at the same time, the amount of data that it generates, right, the amount of vulnerabilities it throws, it's almost impossible for any of the organization or team to keep on working on fixing it. So now how do you deal with this? The first one is you use these basic security plugins in GitHub to at least check for the dependency vulnerability. What I mean by that is any of the vulnerabilities in some of the packages that you may be using, for example, in Node or in Python or in Ruby on Rails. So just checking for any of the dependency vulnerabilities would be far more useful and impactful as opposed to checking security vulnerabilities at your source code level as to whether this kind of a code can lead to injection attack, because there can be too many false positives and none of the source code do a great job at it. So why waste time around it? And these plugins are freely available on GitHub, on GitLab. So just make a use of them. Securing your CI/CD pipeline is extremely essential. Some of the companies, they give full access to their CI/CDs to go into the EC2 instance and or their compute engines and deploy. Now you need this kind of a feature because this just greatly simplifies your deployment. But what you need to make sure is that your CI/CD pipeline or your CI/CD server, let's say you're using Jenkins, is itself not a public server. Because if that is a public server, underneath you're already leaking your private keys to that EC2 machine. So make sure that at least your CI/CD pipeline is secured, and only again those people who are responsible for the deployment and release of your product, only those people have access to those Jenkins or any of the CI/CD pipelines that are using. I cannot stress enough how important CI/CD is, securing your CI/CD is, because bunch of the data leak or bunch of the leaks of your security keys or username and passwords happen through this layer, because almost every organization puts in all of their credentials inside their CI/CD for the overall simplification of their development. So securing CI/CD is extremely essential. And the next is just training your employees, so you don't have to keep like extremely comprehensive sessions, but just remember just some sort of notifications once in a while for them, to make sure that they are not clicking on some phishing emails, or they are just aware that these kind of phishing or spam attempts are happening. Just being aware of them will keep these things in their subconscious mind. So at least that increases your chance that the employees don't fall prey to it, because most of the attacks are social engineering attacks. If you look at Uber, if you look at Twitter, all of the data leak that had happened was because of social engineering attack. Uber recently got like massively breached, where almost everything inside Uber, right from their compute engines to even their Slack channels, right, everything was compromised. The actor was basically publishing messages in Uber's Slack channel, and all of this was purely through a social engineering attack, where one of the employees, the guy was able to get his core credentials through the employees, and later on just escalated everything. So just making your employees aware that these kind of attacks are happening, you need to be careful about it. I think that will go definitely go a long way. Now, application security. Now, making sure there are no vulnerabilities in your web app or mobile app. Although I have mentioned that so far, you can use these free tools, minimize your cost and resources. This is one thing where I would recommend that you do not try to build an in-house capability for it, because one, it's not really worth the effort that you will put in, and the eventual outcome wouldn't be as good as you would have hoped for, and it will be way too expensive for you at this stage. So for application security, it's better to take help from people who do vulnerability assessment and pen testing, who are security engineers, who do this day in and day out. You don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. So you should for application security is one thing that I would highly recommend you take help from security services professional, or you take help of tools like ours, which helps you do both, like unauthenticated scan or deep authenticated level scans as well, because this is something that you should not really mess much with. But yeah, even within application security, if you want to check something in-house, or if this is something that still you can't afford, the one core area that you should ask your engineers to look at it is checking your authentication level vulnerabilities, because this is the most impactful vulnerability. What I mean by authentication level vulnerability is, can through any means somebody else authenticate himself as the true user, right? So making sure your entire authentication process is built as per the best standards that are out there. So it could be just look for the best standards to perform any mechanism. Let's say you are using JWT token, right, or a session token to log in into your systems. So just Google up like what is a correct and the most secure way to generate JWT tokens. This itself will make sure that at least what you're generating, you're not creating a mistake, or the developer is not creating a mistake while generating these JWT tokens, and rely as much as you can on standard libraries as opposed to reinventing the wheel, especially around encryptions. If you're doing encryption, do not for God's sake create your own encryption algorithm or create your own encryption design. Use what is being used, and use only those libraries which has the maximum fork or maximum GitHub stars over it. Use only those libraries. It'll be even better if something is there already inbuilt in the language that you're using. Some of the this is not really related to security, but a lot of people think about getting an ISO 27001 or a SOC 2 compliance. What my experience suggests is, of course, these are an investment. These are an upfront, not only a financial investment, but also a lot of resource investment, because you will have to dedicate one employee to helping you sort through all of the SOC 2 or ISO process, and eventually getting to that certification. So don't do it until a customer explicitly asks for it, and that customer is really worth getting this kind of a compliance. So you should not really spend too much on it until it's really an ask. But even then, how do you get ready for it before, let's say, you go for an ISO or SOC? All the things that I have mentioned to you, all of these things will actually be checked as a part of these compliances. Checking for security vulnerabilities is one of the subsets of any other compliance that you talk about. So if you just keep the basic standards that I have been talking about in place already, you would have done a bunch of work already to go after the so when you go after these certifications, a lot of work would have already been covered. Yeah. So now it's very fair to talk what happens. Let's say all of this is fine. You have made sure that all security is in place. But what happens that I somehow got hacked, or somehow my systems got compromised. So how do you prepare for that day? Let's say your systems are compromised. So the first important thing is you do not have to negotiate with a bad actor. This is never a good idea. If let's say they have posted a message on your system that pay us so and so money, and we'll be able to decrypt all your system, or get your systems right, it's never really a good idea, because you don't know if they will truly be able to decrypt it back. Second part is you don't know whether after paying the money they'll definitely do it, or they will, after a few more days, they'll again do the same thing with you. So in all of these cases, the best way is to just create all of your system entirely in a separate setup. And this is something that everybody should plan, I believe, is where there should be some sort of a script written, or some sort of a document in place on, if let's say everything goes down, how do you get your systems back up again. So this could be also be a fun hackathon that you can keep it in your team over a weekend, where you just ask your technical team, or just divide them and say, hey, how can we get all our systems up and running in 1 hour, or maximum 2 hours? Because doing this will give you immense confidence that even if all my systems are compromised, I can just close down all of those systems and just create another new system. So you don't really have to ever negotiate with it, and doing it in less time will make sure that you have a lower downtime of your application, thus lower losses, and better value to your customers. And additionally, yeah, have proper backups. So if you have a proper database backup and your log backups, again, if they are able to get hold of your internal systems, you already have a couple of backups, right? So you are not really worried whether your data has gone. And mostly people negotiate because their core data has gone away, which is hard to recover. So if you have your proper backups in place, this will help you be prepared and also help you avoid dealing with these ransomwares and these malicious actors. So yeah, that's but yeah, I'm happy to take any questions that anybody may have.
Hey, Hey, Ashwani. Hi.
Hi, Sandeep.
Hey. So, see, the big problem what we see is, so we will have internal employees. Okay, so and they will have access to a lot of these things, right? So my internal data, probably code, and all these things. Then, so what are the very how do you say very cost effective approach to make sure that we can so stop these things. So like some maybe let's take like a bad employee, right? Or maybe someone who is joining my company from my competitor, probably because we are into a mobile app development, for example. So there's other company and the employee joins. Okay, so and he wants to understand on the app because now he sees all the logic things and everything, right? And how do you think we can do something on cost effective side where we can stop these things?
Sure, Sandeep. So I think Sandeep, one of the things that I mentioned, right, having strong role-based authentications really helps you to already block employees into focusing on what they really need. Like, for example, a software developer who is just working on, let's say, front end side of things may not really require an access to network configurations or security groups of your entire your servers or your cloud. So why give him access to that? So blocking defining proper role based authentication helps. The other part which you mentioned, right, where a new developer joins, I want to mention what happens when a disgruntled employee leaves the organization, right? That is actually a big threat in that time frame when you have decided that he should no longer be working and the time he leaves. So the best idea is to connect all of his logins to any of the tools or software that you are using, to connect all of it through his email ID. So once you have deactivated one, you are sure that he is out of your entire system from every possible angle. So making sure that you just have that one channel of connectivity to all the softwares, I think that will really help you have more control.
Oh, okay, okay. And any more cost effective things on this?
So are you looking for like are you looking for any management solutions? Is that something that you're mentioning, asking?
Yes, yeah.
It again really depends on what kind of setup you're using. I think if you are a Windows kind of a person, I think having something like an Active Directory is fairly useful.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Thanks, thanks.
Sure.
We have a question in chat box by Akshay. Is there any way to access or analyze the DDoS attack on a system? If yes, then how?
Yeah, sure, Akshay. So, Akshay, I think analyzing DDoS attacks. One of the things that you can notice is within a very short span of time, if you see an anomalous amount of requests that are coming in. What you can also do is within, let's say, you are using some sort of a web server, right, to accept those requests. So it could be a good idea to track at least which IP address from which IP address or from which geolocation is that request coming from. And if it is suddenly an anomalous attack, I think that where within very short span of time you have too many requests which you usually don't see at that time. I think that would be an indicator of a DDoS attack. But So this is a more valid question if you are a big enterprise where you want to investigate and maybe you want to prosecute the folks who are doing a DDoS. I think at a lower level it's not really worth that kind of an hassle. So this is more of a forensic thing. So rather than doing deeper analysis of DDoS, I would rather say you prepare yourself if a DDoS of this kind happens, which will not be very frequent for seed stage startups because there is not much upside to it. It's better to just protect yourself against it because forensics might not help you much. Um, yeah, I think Pampana has a question. How many developers have a question? Everything of security, taking organic life cycle of the business. So, Pamela, if you look at security as a gear that you should put in place, so you're looking for that timeline. I think that there will never be a good answer to it. I think what you need to do is develop security layer by layer over the time. So currently, let's say if you are a sole developer at this point in time, so all you need to make sure is that the parameter of your application is protected. If you are a bunch of developers, so in that case, you need to make sure that everybody that you have done role based authorization and those things in place. You are not uploading keys or your security credentials on your GitHub. So having them as a part of either some environment variables or things like that. So I think if just a couple of developers, you can start with that, and later on keep on building on top of it. And I think the easiest way to include security is if you feel if you're implementing or deploying any big solution, just Google around it. What is the best recommended and secure way to do this kind of an activity? And just follow those best practices. The best practices itself will cover up to 90% of the things that most other security products would do for you. Uh, what steps should you take for protecting data leak from your employees' laptops? Yeah, well, so Ankush, again, in this one, I believe that having like if you are using like a basic Windows system, right? The easiest you can do is ensuring asking your employees to keep on running Windows Defender on a daily basis. Windows Defender has evolved a lot over the period of time. Mostly, as I said, data leaks are not happening because some malicious guys specifically targeting your employee and trying to steal the data. That usually happens at Uber or a Twitter level. What mostly happens at the early stage level is where people are just throwing around phishing emails and your guy happens to click on it, and through that the data is leaked. So educating him that do not open these links, especially the shortened links like bit.ly, those links. So just before clicking it, it's better to just copy the link, put it into a URL expander. Just make sure what link I'm trying to click on, and then proceed with it. So I think the best way is just making them aware that these kind of things are happening, posting them on your WhatsApp, Slack channels or your communication channels, and just having security in consciousness within the organization. I think that's the best way forward. Is it mandatory to keep the root access with a single person in the company, or should be shared between, let's say, top level tech guys in the company or co-founders? So nothing is mandatory, but I feel having so the root access should only be held by one person, because as less people have it, the lesser the chance you have of leaking it, right? You share it between multiple people. Now you have, let's say, two people have it, so now the possibility of leaking these credentials is from two different places. I would highly recommend only one guy has it, who also takes after the billing and those kind of things, so he can also keep on monitoring that somehow unauthorized resources are not being used. One of the common attacks that we are seeing is people are not directly impacting your resources, rather they are using your AWS credentials to do crypto mining and stuff like that. So they are spawning, let's say, different containers, or they are spawning new EC2 instances to mine those cryptos. So I believe one guy having the access and then building a top-down structure around it is far more beneficial. Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, I think it's a good note to wrap up, Shivani.
Yeah, definitely so. That was an informative session, and I hope all of you have enjoyed and gained the insights on cybersecurity essentials for seed stage startups. If you have any further questions, we are still here for further 2 minutes, and after that, we'll wind up the meeting. Yeah.
Can you people share out the presentation to us? I mean, the beans are very good.
Sure, Parikshit. I think
Sure,
after the
sure.
webinar, we'll send out an email.
Thank you, Ashwin.
Awesome. Sounds great, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Really appreciate you guys giving a time on Tuesday morning. I hope you guys have a very nice day. Thank you so much. Bye.